It being 7 p.m. on Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, we will begin tonight's Select Board meeting. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? There being none. Administrative business is the next item. No items available for action. The next item under old and new business, we have the ALS paramedic update.
Do you want me to, well, I'm curious, should I grab Mike? I'm just curious if we had any bites on the, or where we are at in the process of getting that request for the consultant
Sure.
posted. Maybe we go out of work and go back to it.
All right. Let's jump down to the ARPA request discussion. So are there any items on the request list that we want to consider for discussion at our next select board meeting? Did anything stand out?
Well, I'd like to discuss the Board of Health's request for their vehicle. I think it was a vehicle they were looking for.
Vehicle. All right. Any other items we want to put on there for next week? For the next meeting, sorry.
It
seems like the facilities stuff is not going to go away. Perhaps we could have Brian to talk about the HVAC and airflow things. I mean, if we're just looking to check these things off.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
That's a big one too. If we're not going to do it with freezing. So.
What about the, I think it was down below, under the town modernization of cybersecurity and upgrades? I don't know what that
yeah.
entails. Is that something that we want to gather
Sure.
some more
Yeah.
information?
Just looking at my spreadsheet to see what we've done so far.
Did we do the culvert cap repairs?
I thought
we did.
The culvert
Yeah, I
cap
thought we did,
repair,
yeah.
we had mentioned, and I don't know if there were, I think the follow-up was going to be with Mr. McGowan and Mr. Farrager.
Right. They're getting pricing. I know Mr. McGowan was going to get pricing. He said it's about a 15-inch reinforced concrete cover, a cap that's on that. So they do. He does have the specs, the map. Plans of how it was built. So Chris was going to try to get some prices so we know if it's 400,000 or 600,000. He didn't really kind of have a good ballpark. I had spoken to him. He was going out to get prices. I hadn't followed up with them, so I can find out where that stands.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just, if that's going to go from 4 to 6, so that would probably preclude us from other things. So maybe look at the biggest ones and go down from there. And if facilities and DPW, that would be my suggestion.
Okay.
If we have any numbers, if not, then fine.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so you want to, we'll put that up we'll put that on for an update. Think that'd be sufficient for a few weeks until our next meeting?
Sure, yeah.
So the culvert repair pricing, Board of Health vehicle request, the HVAC airflow request from facilities, and the cybersecurity and upgrade request. So we'll put those four on for the next meeting.
Sure, yeah, for the next meeting, we probably wouldn't have much on the cyber. The July 10th and 11th, the company, the firm is coming in, that we've gotten a state grant to do the technology assessment. So they'll be in on site July 10th and 11th, and they'll go building to building to assess what's here, meet with all the department managers to find out what their needs are, what they have, what they might need, what they should have, and then they're going to provide a comprehensive report and kind of do a priority list. So once we have that report, then we were to look for the funding, for the implementation funding from the ARPA account from that point forward. So that's kind of where that stands, but probably by 2 weeks, we won't have that information.
Okay.
They'll be here that week doing the assessment,
So maybe the meeting in August, I think is then the next time we would meet after.
Right.
That meeting in July.
Yes, yeah,
That'd be-
and they'll definitely have more information. I know they said probably from the time they come in, do the assessment, do a final report, it'll probably be, 6-8 weeks, so.
Oh, okay, so
you know,
it's
so,
well,
you know, so it might
September.
be, definitely have some more feedback by the August meeting, but it may not be totally done until the end of the summer. So,
Okay,
Gotcha.
well, that's fair, that's a good start.
and that will incorporate too, I went to the Library Trustees Board meeting last night, and they're asking about their request for the Wi-Fi and technology upgrades, and that will all be incorporated, because they're going to all the buildings, so police, fire, town hall, library, so all of them. So that can kind of get lumped into that as well, so.
Very good. Any further discussion under ARPA requests discussion? All right, moving back to ALS paramedic update.
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
I just wanted to touch base with the town administrator. I know it's only been a week since we decided to go that route, but I just didn't know if we had any updates on, where that is in the process, submitted for advertisement or anything like that.
Right. I moved forward with advertising. I do have a final version for in the board packet for tonight, if everyone's good with it. Because it takes advance notice to get in the paper, so it'll be published in the item on Friday, which is our only legal requirement that we put in the item. But seeing as we want to get interest in it, we're trying to distribute it out. So I also sent it to the Goods and Services Bulletin for the state, that it's not legally required, because it's only over $100,000 for that, but consultants usually get subscription to that, so they'll at least see it if it goes out. I know a couple of firms, obviously the one we used before, but also the firm that did the communications strategy for the downtown project. They've also created a public safety, municipal public safety consulting arm of that group as well. So they were interested, I've spoken with them, they were interested in getting it. So we'll also distribute it directly to companies that are known to do public safety or EMS type work, and we'll mail it out to them directly. So if everything looks good today, then we can start on that distribution. By tomorrow, we can start getting it out to people. The date we put on for submittal would be July 21st. If it's in the paper today, on Friday, you need a minimum of 2 weeks before the deadline, and with the holiday and 2 weeks would have been beyond the next select board meeting anyways, and with the holiday, I just pushed it out to 3 weeks to the July 21st, so that's the deadline to get submittals back. So hopefully we'll start hearing that.
Very good. Any other questions or discussion?
Just that, when we were talking last week, one of the things we were hoping to discuss, Chief Lutz did bring up, he was posing the question, I thought it was a reasonable question just to have a discussion about would it be possible for our internal resources, whoever that we would decide that to be, whether it be the assistant town administrator, the HR director, whoever, but the possibility of accommodating the finance committee's request for a more robust implementation study, but just doing it with internal resources. I thought that was a fair question. I thought it was a fair thing for discussion, and just for people that watched the meeting last week, it just doesn't. It looks like we're going in this direction. I think the finance committee communicated pretty clearly that the outside consultant is something that they apparently feel very strongly about. So, we're just trying to move forward on this. So I think I don't really have that much of a problem with it, other than we're in this line of work. We work with other boards all the time, and I think if someone has a legitimate question or a possible different avenue to accomplish the same goal, I think it's worthy of having a discussion. So I am a little bit disappointed that we're not even having that opportunity to talk about that, but whatever. I think we all know that this is a very important initiative. So if going this route will build a little bit more collaboration between us and the finance committee and the fire department to keep moving this along and hopefully get this resolved sometime in the next 4 or 5 months. I'm fine with it, but so I just kind of wish we could have had that conversation, as well as I still would like to have a discussion, because if we do move forward and go to a special town meeting for ALS, the fire chief has also been pretty vocal about the fact that he thinks he needs additional resources for fire inspection, and I just think that it's very important, and he's publicly stated that there's plenty of workload, and that's not really something that we really want to get not be caught up on. So if we are moving to a special town meeting, I'd like to discuss the possibility of maybe accommodating that request, because I think that's a very important, that's not something I think we should be neglecting. If he really thinks that there's a need for, if we're not being able to keep up with all the fire inspections that are necessary, and I think that responsibility has probably grown over the years, so it's probably a lot more comprehensive now than it was in years past. But I think we just need to consider accommodating that request. It's all just for the safety of the town. I think it would be in our best benefit.
Agreed.
Did he come to the meeting looking for those resources before, or?
That
Was
was
that
in the
last
budget
week?
process, but the
Yeah.
finance committee didn't approve it.
Oh, I see, thank you.
At our subcommittee, there was no discussion that was not, that had been requested and not approved.
Oh, okay.
Which caught me off guard, because I didn't know if it had been included in the final request.
Right.
Because when we met as a subcommittee, the line items were ALS and the overtime. There was no discussion that they were not funding the request by Chief Lutz for the inspections. So that.
And to be fair, I wasn't a part of those meetings, so I don't really know how deliberate the request was. I know when the budget presentation was made to us, it was on his budget presentation with like an asterisk at the bottom of it. So even then, it wasn't included in the main request. But the assumption, I was assuming that was going to be something that was being considered. So I don't know how vocal he was requesting it, but I think it would just be worth having that discussion, just to kind of flesh that out a little bit and find out how that did go down, and do we want to revisit that? Was it just something that kind of slipped through the cracks, or what?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
As I recall, when the finance committee was here and the chief was here, he did a lengthy presentation about why he felt that there was a need for it, and obviously the finance committee disagreed.
I agree, and, because I do recall him, I think the question was asked, how long, you know, would it be, how long would those positions be needed? And the idea was, once you get from A to Z, then you're going
Start
back to
again.
A. So I was definitely, do you recall, there was no mention of it at, do you recall any mention of it at the subcommittee budget meeting about that not being funded?
No, I don't remember that specifically being called out as not being funded. Did you recall him having, you know, the discussion with us? That's why I was confused a little bit, but the board
Yeah.
understood.
I think, yeah, valid points, and maybe we can get some clarification and then figure out what we need to do to at least get one of the two resources, if not both.
Right, yeah.
Especially with the number of, I know Chief Lutz has mentioned on numerous occasions, the number of units that are going into Jack Mills and the requirement that's needed for the
Yeah.
fire inspections.
Yeah,
It's a full-time job.
He's gone on the record multiple times saying that if we hired 2 safety inspectors, they would be busy 40 hours a week doing nothing but catching us up on our fire safety inspection obligations. That just scares me a little bit.
And both of those positions, I mean, the town receives a permitting fee, which I would assume would help offset some of the cost of a salary, right? Where if the more inspections they're doing and more permitting fees that are brought in, then, but I guess, yeah, well,
Yeah,
we'll see what we can
when
get to.
When we have an opportunity to, I'd just like to have that discussion, that's all.
Excellent. Let's skip over the town administrator goals review and just jump into the professional development review and reflection for FY '23. And that, you know, the other 3 items are all connected and we can discuss them together. But I know that you had mentioned that there's some professional development that has taken place, and just looking to see some of your, you know, some of your feedback on how that's going and
Yeah, I think 2 major initiatives that we did on professional development, I think I mentioned one last week, was with the customer service, that we did have a consultant come in, kind of lead some discussion with managers, and then another session with employees to talk about how they currently manage and operate their office right now, what their hours are, how you know, do they identify when they answer the phone, how do they, when customers approach them, how do they, kind of intake with them, or if they're not for that office, how do they refer and stuff like that. So we kind of did some information gathering, and then also kind of some coaching on, even in the public sector, how customer service is important and how they should, you know, try to meet standards and expectations. And from those discussions, the consultant was going to kind of put together some protocols or some suggestions about how kind of universally we could operate amongst all departments, and then bring it to the select board to see if it's something that you feel is on the right track, and then things that we can then ask to be implemented throughout the department heads from there. So that was kind of one major initiative that we did, with centered around customer service and how we are accessible to the public. You know, when offices are open, it's hard, especially in town hall, when there are 1 or 2 person offices. If people are at lunch, or people are on vacation, or at meetings or inspections for the inspectors, it's hard. You know, we're open, the building's open 8 to 4, but it's impossible to have somebody in an office every hour of that 8 to 4, you know, 20. But how we can better manage that, of being at least letting the public know when someone will be there. So where office hours are 8 to 12, and if you're going to be out, put a sign on the door, or, have a message on your voicemail, or maybe a way you can direct them to somebody else for help if you're not there. So those are the kind of things that we're working on to implement from those discussions of how we can better communicate and let the public know when they come in with the expectation that they're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that office is closed and nobody knows how to help them, how we can better manage their experience when they come to town hall. So, so we'll look forward to that follow-up from the consultant as to, what recommendations that they might have. The second was that we did some cybersecurity training and awareness, again, through the state grant, and that's ongoing, that's for the calendar year. So all employees had to take an assessment at the beginning and do some training, online training, and then there's periodic exercises that take place over the course of the year, which they will be sent some fake emails and see how they react to them, and then we will get a report back as to how many opened them, which ones they opened, what types of emails that they were clicking on, or how good we're doing, of how we were able to kind of take that training and then bring it forward to implementation. So the assistant town administrator is overseeing that, so that's something that will continue for the remainder of the year, and hopefully get a report at the end to see how we did. So those are two major initiatives. HR started, almost halfway through the fiscal year, and then she was getting herself up to speed. So, and she coordinated the customer service training. But as we go forward, as I mentioned last week, there's a myriad amount of different trainings. She wants to do some more in-person training, but then there's a lot of online training. Then there's individual departments will do their own professional development, where managers will go to conferences or meetings and keep up with their associations. But a lot of this, being done kind of informally, we'd like to really kind of more document, have it more documented and more formal, that we know what we're doing, we know what the outcomes are, and what we're getting for that training, or where the shortfalls of what we should be doing, more of what we should be doing. So if there's anything I think the board has as suggestions or areas that you think we should highlight, please let us know, because I think we're having HR now, and I think departments are very open to it, and when I sat down with them during my review process, they are very open to saying how can we make sure that we're doing what you need us to do. They know their jobs, they go and they do their job, but how does that fit into bigger part of the organization? And one thing with help of HR and with the assistant town administrator, we're going to try to do more of that regular department head get-togethers, and it seems as though people were open to that. We certainly don't want to meet just to meet and waste people's time, and we don't want to have a 10-page agenda, so then they feel like only 2 things apply to them. But I think there's definitely some organization-wide policies or procedures or practices that we want everyone to be doing. Even if the department works for another elected board or another oversight authority, they certainly have direction that they need to take from that board as to how they're managing the department, but there are also internally, there are also town-wide policies and practices that they need to. They're all under the personnel bylaws, so they all have to follow those rules, but there are also other expectations that we should have as a town-wide and not just as individual departments. So just by nature of years ago of having so many elected departments, elected boards, and that had their own autonomy, things just kind of got into a culture and historically of being siloed. So now that things are starting to come more centralized, that we're trying to bring that together. And it's going to take time, and whether it's, hiring practices and Christine's going to be, HR is going to be working on, forms and onboarding packages and making sure that these things are standard, and it's not just every department kind of creating their own paperwork. And again, it gets done, and we do what we need to do, but we need to kind of be more of one ship culture, that we're going in the same direction. So it's good, it's exciting, and I think, Christine, I try to tell her she's only one person, and it's a lot of work, but I think she's excited for it, and be able to kind of create the department and put her stamp on it. So she's been doing a lot. So I think we'll see, this is starting, a lot of this has been put in place, but I think we'll really see it come to fruition in the next fiscal year that we can build upon. So.
Excellent.
Great.
Mr. Chair, Mike, thank you for that update. So the recommendations and suggestions that the consultant said they're going to come back to us with kind of like little takeaways from the activity.
Exactly.
Is there any way, did they communicate like what that timeline would be like? Because I'm just thinking that would be a nice report for us to review while we're considering revising our townwide goals, because there might be some things that the consultant kind of like came across that said, maybe we should try doing something different on, whatever it is. And I think it'd be some nice reading material as we're kind of reviewing our goals and which ones, if we want to change some or add some or whatever. I think that would be a nice document to have.
Okay. Sure. I'll follow up with Christine. I know both I think there seems to be a sufficient time that has passed that we should be expecting it in the near future. So I don't, want to say, because I don't know if it's next week or the week after, but it wouldn't be months from now. I think it's just a couple of weeks, so I can ask Christine to follow up with it.
And the other question I had is, you said that this consultant, this service, they also communicated that they're kind of a list of other training opportunities that they conduct.
Right.
So in addition to, like you said, maybe your office and the board talking about what we think might be important, I think it would be a good idea. I don't know if you could ask Angela to do one of those survey monkeys, and maybe if we have a list of potential professional development opportunities, we send the survey out to town employees and let them, because they might all be interested in one particular type of training. So, I think we're going to do more than one over the next year. So if we do one that we think is important to the direction that we see everything going, but I think we should also offer the employees an opportunity to pick one that they think would benefit them the most as well. And that's just I'm not speaking for the board, there's my opinion and recommendation.
Sure. So would you suggest we give them a menu, after
Yeah.
we kind of put together with a consultant, some ideas?
Sure.
And then kind of give a menu for employees to rate what they, rank what they think is most important to them?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be just open-ended where they have to tell us?
No, it would be like
give them
the
okay.
consultant would say, here's 8 subject matters that we would offer training in one way, shape, or form, and have them pick one. I mean, they're not the only training firm out there. So I mean, that's actually a pretty good point. I don't know if maybe we can talk about it. Maybe we do leave it open-ended and just say what do you want? I don't know. Or maybe we do both. We can say, have this list and then have a comment section at the bottom was like, if any of these aren't any of the training you're interested in, what would you be interested in? And kind of give a blank comment section at the bottom for people to just fill in something that we might not have thought of.
Yeah, I think that could work, yeah. But I think the consultant, they do this in many communities, so I know they would know, well, they did this one in Clinton, but
Yep.
they did these other types of ones in other communities too. So I know they can definitely come up with a list. And that wouldn't be a bad idea either, just have an open response at the end too. And,
Yeah.
you know, most people probably won't engage it, but some might. You might kind of think of something that, you know, you didn't know.
Sure.
Well, you know, for coursework, that, you know, there's this one program where they'll send it to the schools frequently, and they'll show you, like, what are the most popular ones that, you know, that people are taking, and, you know, so I think something along those lines, to your point, if they have that data where these are the trainings that are most popular in, you know, similar municipalities, like, we could throw those on there to get an idea, and then, to your point, if there's things that, some people have expressed interest in, just to get an idea for that. I think anything we can do for, professional development, you know, whether it's learning new software or whatever the case may be, if people if they would like.
Exactly,
training,
and that's what we'd like to know, whether through this process or the technology assessment. As I always tell the department managers, the two things that I would always support, you know, is technology improvements within reason, and what we can afford a budget, and professional development. So I always tell them, those are two things I'll support all day long if you can justify how it's going to help us, you know, that's a good point. So that can be included in there as well too, if they have any technology requests as well.
Excellent. Any other discussion? There being none, moving on to, so I think now we're on goal number 5, is that today?
Right, yeah, so I was just going to pass out, I mean, this was the one of the evaluation, just establishing evaluation system, which we did over the past year. So it was kind of really a work in progress.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know it's been kind of piecemeal as that we've been handing these out, but I'd like to maybe kind of, you know, if the board has any input on it, but to kind of go back and put all 5 of them together and kind of update them and tweak them and kind of do a final report. But this one here is just on the performance review system, you know, that the select board had, you know, there was a subcommittee that established kind of a evaluation process. Then we implemented that this past year through select board establishing goals, and reviews were conducted, or I've conducted reviews with department managers, which then we set goals based on those town-wide goals and some of their personal goals that then instructed that they then push down through their evaluations and reviews with their employees, you know, highlighting the customer service aspect, better communication, whether it's through their website or how they're communicating what their offerings are to the public, and just in general, you know, how we can try to improve. Always look, not to say it's bad what we're doing, but how we can always look at it with the lens of how we can always improve on our efficient delivery of services. So we established the goals, we established the process. The second objective was to foster two-way communication with employees and supervisor, and that's what I try to do. When I did my evaluations, it wasn't just putting together, filling out a form and giving it to them to review and sign. We had an initial meeting where we sat down. I booked out an hour. A lot of them took longer to try to talk about how things were going in the department, try to inform them of this process, why we were doing it, why it was important. Talked about the goals that the townwide goals the board had handed down. Tried to instruct how they could help incorporate those in their department. Asked them maybe some projects or ideas that they had for personal goals over that period. And then we had another meeting to follow up from that. So it wasn't just a one and done. We then followed up and kind of got their feedback after, and I kind of went through the form, instructed them how the form worked, how they, how it would be filled out, because it was a new form that they hadn't seen before. So kind of gave them all those tools. So that's why it was a good, really productive meeting, and then we would have a follow-up to make sure that if there were any questions, to make sure that they had input on the goals and before we completed it. So that's, I felt was, kind of how I did that two-way communication. I'll be monitoring, and asking how they did on their goals and with their employees over this next month or so as I sit down again. I know the board's looking to finalize in the summer the goals that we'll be handing down, but at least I'm going to start doing my preliminary meetings to talk about how things went for the year, how they made out with their staff, and then once the goals are finalized, then we can have that goal setting meeting with them. That follow-up meeting, I can do some goal setting and see how their personal goals, how they did on those, and then going forward, what new ideas that the board would like to see us work on in the upcoming year. So that was the third one, and the third one is just the, again, having a consistent process, and I think it's good having HR here, I think going forward, to ensure as I said, the board did create that process in the forms that we used this year, but then having HR to really, we talked about, asked if Christine would, as we go through this next round, because she wasn't here and for the last round, that if she could schedule kind of one of our departmental meetings, would talk about, giving her take on how to do an efficient review, how they would, kind of approach it, and I gave my opinion on it, but I'd like to hear what her thoughts on it as well, and then she can then help manage then to do the follow-up to make sure that they were using the proper paperwork, that that they were following the timelines, and that that they were, I think I put at the bottom that they were following accepted personnel best, but it's best practices, so I'll have to add that in the end. So as we go through this next round, she'll be very valuable in helping to kind of firm that up from the start that we did this year. So,
Great.
like I said, so that's kind of just an overview of that goal, and some of the other ones. Like I said, I kind of put together some preliminary thoughts, but now as we're kind of wrapping things up, I'd like to kind of look at that again and put a whole package together for the board.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. This is great. I mean, we've been going over these each week, one at a time. You take a step back and look at all the work that you've put into this process from start to finish. I'm sure it wasn't easy, and I'm glad we have a human resources manager to give us a hand as well as the rest of your staff. But I think you guys did a really good job, considering I'd say this is probably the first real year that we're doing it. The first year was almost like a pilot program. I don't think we didn't even know. We were just doing the best that we could. I think this is, now that we have some professional assistance from human resources, and we had that 1 year under our belt, I think this is really looking good. So thank you. Great job.
No, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. And I think what it's helped me do, I think, which was a key takeaway for me, I think, is having to look back and take that time to document what was done. And now going forward, I think even more so what I'm going to try to keep is like a folder on my desk or something that's handy, that even weekly or monthly I can jot things down. Because when you go back to try to remember or go back to review, there are things that you forget. And I think even a couple of comments like the board had mentioned that you just do automatically, but you don't really highlight it or see it as a big thing when it's just your day-to-day job. And I think we need to do a better job on communicating those accomplishments to the board, which will help get that out to the public. So we say that a lot internally, that, you know, we get so much done with the staffing that we have, but there's always a to-do list. So you're never highlighting or celebrating what was done because you're knowing, oh, this other thing should have been done last week. So you panic about the next thing to do instead of celebrating what was done. So I think this process has helped me focus on that a little bit more because I needed to give the feedback to the board. So now going forward, now I'll know, hey, that's a good thing to put down on the list. That's a good thing to put down. And then it'll be a lot easier for me to put a report together for the board. So, so that was, I think, something that I found extremely helpful this past year. So.
You know, when I had spoke with Mr. Ward earlier, before the meeting, you know, one of the things that, to that point, was when Mr. Kittredge had read the statement related to the town's bond rating, that would be something that I may not have known otherwise.
Right.
But that's a huge accomplishment for the town, and it provides a huge financial benefit to the town. But, you know, I don't know that you would have necessarily told us that unless,
Right.
you know, that helped to like, to shine some light on it, you know.
Right, exactly. And then during one of the discussions, Mr. Kerrigan talked about the stabilization fund, and, you know, we had 2 years now with no borrowing. So those are things that, you know, internally, that I'm satisfied with myself, because I know we've kind of been able to do something that was helpful to the budget process. But to then to kind of bring that thinking forward to say, well, how has that kind of helped the town overall as well too? And that bond rating, we were going through, that was a kind of a huge meeting we had with the bond people. We had to justify, you know, why we thought we were doing good things here. And it was you know, a lot of prep and then a long meeting, and we got pummeled with a lot of questions. But we were just happy we got the good rating so we can get a good interest rate when we went out to borrow. So that was our goal. It wasn't really saying, oh, how does that then communicate to the board or to the town of how that's going to help our overall financial situation for the town. You know, it was an in-the-moment thing that we wanted to do well to get a good bond, a good interest rate on the bond, you know. So again, yeah, I appreciate that feedback, because those are things I need to get better at documenting myself too.
Well, the humbleness, right?
Yeah,
Of
exactly.
not wanting to like pat yourself on the back,
Yeah.
but these are things that, you know,
Yeah,
that
are
they
very,
need to be recognized.
yeah, and very impactful to our town, so it's important, so thank you.
You know, and so along those lines, I had met with Mrs. Purple today, just about the evaluation process, and, you know, to have a professional provide some insight into what we're doing well, you know, and as we've talked about from the beginning, you know, this process is, it's malleable, right? Where this thing is gonna be shaped so that in the end, it's accomplishing exactly what we hope it will. So there was a lot of great feedback that Christine had provided, and so over the next few weeks, one of the things that Christine was going to reach out to you about, or if she hadn't already mentioned, was if you wanted to send your spotlights to her, she could put that into onto the form, so the form that we've used to do the evaluations in the past would be updated with all of the goals and then the sub-goals. And then Christine she also did mention, to Michael's point there, on, you know, having an opportunity for the town administrator to provide reflection on how he thinks he did in meeting the goals through the last year, and then having that process be more of collaboration, right? So then the board will still provide the evaluation. There'll be, ideally, there would be discussion prior to any discussion of his performance in open session, which we did not do last year for Michael. And then we also talked about the calendar, right, where right now we have originally the idea was we would set it up based upon the fiscal year, but now Christine had suggested maybe we turn that clock a little bit, we started earlier, so that way the evaluation would be complete prior to town election. So then that way the board that was in place through that fiscal year would then be able to evaluate, and then the findings could be presented anytime between June and July. And then additionally, having the board begin to think about ideas on goals and objectives for the upcoming fiscal year. So then that way, all of those things can come together sooner. And then, you know, I had communicated the July 15th on getting Michael his, you know, the townwide goals, having those accepted, Michael having his goals accepted, and so on. So that might start a little sooner. So even, it may not be a 12-month cycle, maybe it ends up being like a 10-month cycle or a 9-month cycle, so that way it fits, right? But nothing, a lot to digest now. None of that will change this current evaluation, but that's kind of the idea. So again, as Christine mentioned today, she was saying, well, you know, you're behind, we're behind on where we want to be, but the idea being is this is, you know, we're essentially in year 2 of this, so.
And I think we kind of unofficially, when we were mapping this out, we kind of targeted the summertime to handle the evaluations because it's relative to the other months, it's just a little bit slower, and it was kind of a good time to just like focus on it. But that's a great point. I never thought of that with the election, because if we do the evaluation at that time, you're gonna have possibly 2 brand new people or 1 brand new person that's not really gonna have a lot of perspective. So that's a very good point that I never thought of. Well, that's worth considering.
You know, and ultimately not, however, again, working with Michael and Christine, however this shapes out, not having it be a cumbersome task where all of a sudden, like, you know, any spotlights are creating significant work on, you know, how can we find the balance between being cognizant of your time and then also being able to communicate the things that are happening, and then, you know, us being able to have sufficient information to complete an evaluation, right? Because I know, like last year, some of the information we really weren't sure on, and that's where this was born out of. But then, so there'll obviously be some more will be coming down the line. Christine had also suggested that if the board was comfortable, she could send out the evaluation in a Google form, so then we could fill it out that way, and then that would provide the feedback in an Excel sheet, which she could, you know, manipulate and so on and so forth.
Yes, please.
I don't have any problem with that. If we're doing the evaluation right close to before the election, if that's what she's targeting, that makes sense. But we just got to be careful. I don't want to. That's the busiest time of the year for Michael, right before town meeting.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like add another thing. I don't want him worrying about finishing up evaluations when he's got a million other things on his plate already.
100% agree. So there's that last piece. There's kind of 2 things, right? So that the first was using a Google form for this evaluation,
Yeah.
right? And then secondly, I think that will become part of further discussion on the evaluation process. So that way, we're all able to provide any feedback or insight to exactly to that point where you're preparing for annual town meeting and, you know, for the budgeting, and then to add this at that time.
Right.
So how can we do so without adding
Stress.
a whole other
Yeah.
stressful
This is,
burden?
yeah.
So And I think everyone has expressed that, with the commitment to making this work for everybody, right? And, so yeah, that's a valid point. So I think as, over the next, 3 to 6 weeks, maybe by our August meeting, maybe have like a better idea. And again, just be an understanding that
Yeah.
even if this doesn't get rolling until September, the long-term play.
Yeah. Yep. No,
But yeah, that's
good
great.
stuff, good stuff.
And then, and that's gonna jump right into the FY '24 Select Board goals and objectives. When we had discussed these objectives for the board last year, the idea was I don't think it was something that was ever viewed as being like, all right, check the box, it's finished, let's move on to a new goal. It kind of seemed like it
Living
would be-
document.
Exactly it. So if there's, as part of that Google form, Christine had suggested she would put a section in there where if there's anything that we want to brainstorm as, whether it's adding, subtracting, keeping the goals as they are and just kind of, modifying as needed, whatever the case may be, but there will be something there for feedback on it.
So like, it'll be like something with like the Microsoft Word tracker for like updates. So like if I go into the Google document and make an update, and then it'll say like, I made this update at this date, and then, is it something like that?
Yeah, so basically with the Google form, you enter the information and then the creator, so Christine she'll be able to get all that information in an Excel spreadsheet so she can see
Okay,
everybody's individual information, and then she can combine
okay.
those fields.
Yeah.
So that way, like if there are 5 different suggestions, she can
Right.
put those together to show the board, and then we can,
Yeah, it almost just
Discuss.
is more efficient. It just saves from like cut and pasting. And
Right.
it'll all kind of like
Exactly.
flow into that sheet and then I can move on.
So it'd be like she would send out the goals from last year on a folder on like a Google Drive we'd have access to, and then we'd have, I'm making it up, but we'd have like, say, like 2 weeks for all of us to make whatever amendments we would want, and then we'd get together and discuss like what the feedback was, something along those lines?
yeah, so I think it would be more along the lines of if there's anything different that you want to see,
Okay,
throw it out there, and then we can figure out what's the word I'm looking for, like how it's going to be presented,
Okay.
right? So kind of like what we did the last time, right? There was a goals and objectives rough draft, then we went through and modified it to that final version that you have there, right? So I
Yep,
think it's, starting with, here's something that I think, would be a good goal for the board to focus on for the upcoming year.
Mhm.
We can talk about it, shape it how we need it, and then go from there. But at least it would just be a discussion point.
okay.
And I did upload the current goals and objectives to this packet for this afternoon. So if you want to refer back to that, before it gets sent out, that's what we would be starting with anyways.
Perfect.
Perfect, yeah. So it sounds like that Christine will send out the link, she'll email the link to us, and then we could, the idea we would want to have it completed maybe the Friday before our next meeting, so that way it gives her 4 or 5 days to, if there's any formatting or whatnot, so I don't know what the timeline on that calendar is. We talked, was it July 19th?
I think the 12th was the
yeah,
next
I don't-
meeting, July
yeah.
12th. So, yeah, next week is the holiday, and then it'd be the Wednesday after.
So I have July 14th, right?
I have,
Am I in the right year?
that's, no.
Let's see here.
Wednesday is the 12th.
It's June. That's
July, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Of
So we
July
talked about going
12th,
to
yeah.
12,
And then the 9th of August.
12th and 9th.
Yeah, because we needed to do the year-end transfers. So by
Gotcha.
not having to meet during the holiday week, we have to do it by July 15th. So by the 12th would allow us to accomplish that before the deadline.
All right, it would, does everyone think that maybe by July 9th, would that be adequate time for everyone to finish the evaluation? And then that would provide a couple days. And I can talk to Christine tomorrow if she needs more time, then maybe we try Friday the 7th, whatever the case may be, or
Yeah,
we,
be
you
flexible.
know, we
Yeah,
can
touch base with her.
make it work however we need to.
So I don't know what her thoughts were. I didn't get a chance to, if I can follow up with her. So it was just creating a form with the current information on there?
All right, say that, so,
Yeah, with like the current goals and objectives.
yep,
And then she was going to create a form and send that out, and then the board would then just review and put in suggestions about adding to different things.
sure, so, all right, so the template that we were gonna use is the same one as last year.
Yeah.
So where it had all the goals with the objectives, and then we would rate each area. So Christine was saying if you send her what you've done, she'll input that into that form, right? So that way it's all updated with the current goals and objectives.
Oh, okay.
And then the Google form is like, it's a, I don't know how, like in,
Like, to describe it?
yeah. like-
Yeah, it almost is just, yeah, it's like just an input form or a survey or something like that, and you just add it to it, and then once you submit it, it'll, on the back end, like, populate a spreadsheet, so no one has to go in and like copy paste.
Yeah, so, all right, so then that way, so then
And
you
then,
have
then you have like spreadsheet.
the actual evaluation, our evaluation is gonna be done on the input, and then she'll take that data and then tie it into the actual evaluation form,
Okay.
if that makes sense. But then on that form, and I can show you
I know,
what
it's
it
hard
looks
to
like.
explain.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I was just trying to gauge in
It's better.
timing of how much time she would need. So it was just creating a form with the current goals and objectives, and at least that information's already out there, so it'd just be creating the form. But if it's having to put together all my stuff with it, that might be a little bit more
So
complicated.
that's where she was saying, if you can send her what you've created, then it becomes copying and pasting
Okay.
into, from one into the other.
Okay.
And then that input form becomes similar, but it's like, she can actually just give us that table.
Okay.
And it would show anonymously how, in each area, how people scored.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I can, yeah, well.
Why don't you just go
Yeah.
and talk to her tomorrow? She's
Right.
turned yours
yeah.
down from you.
Exactly, yeah. So I can talk to her tomorrow, and I should be able to get my information together fairly quickly, so.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure if it was just the goals and objectives, I'd give her that and she just upload it, but if I'll put my stuff together, then I'll work on that.
Yes, I mean, what you've
I
already,
mean, you've
what
already
you've
kinda
already
done
done.
it.
Yeah.
And then to your point, if there are, if there's anything you want to change
Yeah, I
on
may
it,
just
then
read
you
it
can
over
just talk to
again.
her, exactly. You can iron that out with her, and then,
Yeah.
and if before our next meeting is not sufficient time, then we can bump it to August if need be, and go
Yeah,
from there.
that was my question, that date, that deadline, were you thinking that would be the deadline for the finished town goals and objectives, or the deadline for us to put our feedback in and then discuss if we did want to change the goals and objectives?
So I think that deadline would be completing Michael's evaluation.
Okay,
And then the goals and objectives for FY '24 would just be kind of like brainstorming.
yeah, that would be,
Right.
because we'd finished Mike's evaluation for the old objectives and then start talking about the new ones. Okay.
Yeah, so if there's anything people want to discuss or think about, then we
Okay.
could throw it on that, and then it
Understood.
becomes the
Understood.
think tank, I guess.
Yeah, well, my schedule's fairly open tomorrow, pretty much, so I'll meet with Christine in the morning and see what she needs.
Yeah, and again, if there's anything that you need to communicate accordingly, then we can adjust that timeline. I know that's the week of the 4th of July, so, to give people time where they can focus on it and not feel rushed or distracted, would be ideal. And then, so that wraps that up for old and new business. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to bring up under old and new business? All right. There were no community announcements. So on July 8th is the Clinton Fire Department's annual fireworks event, and that's, so yeah, people can just go up to the Clinton Middle School or Clinton High School in that field, or anywhere else around town on Birded Hill area. That's a great event. I'm not sure of the rain date, if there is a rain date, knock on wood.
Mr. Chair, did we make our donation to
Yeah, I
that?
was gonna say, they are accepting donations, but did we make?
Isn't this the one where it's?
We
Yeah.
get in trouble because it's a lagging
because
donation.
Yeah.
It's next.
It's the
well,
year.
It's in the next
it's the
fiscal year?
fiscal year,
Yeah.
so I think didn't we?
No, that was going to be for the next board meeting, so.
Oh.
Yeah,
We'll make a
so we do
donation.
have the request.
Okay.
And I did talk with the accountant, and she would like to keep it on the fiscal year, so we were able to do it for last year. So now, she said if we, instead of this meeting, if we could just wait till the next meeting
So on
and
the
do it
12th.
then, that she preferred that it was with that.
And they have enough to get by this year? They have enough to get by this year without that?
Well, I think it would be part of their project, so they would still be able to use it for their expenses that they're going to do for this year. So it would
Probably,
be
Kind of
giving
like
them
a-
money for this year's event, and then it gets it on that cycle that they're getting the donation in the month that they hold the event, so hopefully they can cover their costs. Yep. So,
Okay.
Very good. And then, so the next. So I don't think Terry Ngano's the Cruise in Clinton
Oh,
event, that's on the 22nd, 21st, 22nd. I just don't, I don't
yeah.
want, I just
it's-
want to give.
I think it's Thursday, the 20th, but I'm not 100% sure.
yeah, it's definitely that week.
In that
Okay.
area?
Nice plug.
That is. All right, outside of that, the next time we'll meet will be Wednesday, July 12th at 7 PM.
And unless anyone proves us differently, I'm saying that we set a record for most consecutive meetings by a select board. five weeks in a row. So unless Terry might be able to dig something up to prove me wrong, but
The streak
I'm
ends.
telling everyone that.
I feel like I'm missing something. That's all right. All right, well, have a
Okay.
safe and enjoyable 4th of July.
Leave the fireworks to the professionals.
And,
Motion
excellent.
to adjourn?
Second.
Oh, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great night.
Wow, you can tell it's our 5th in a row. We are out of gas.